week's episode of One More Round. Today I have Susan Schöning on today's episode. Really excited to have Susan with me. How are you, Susan?
Doing fantastic. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Mark.
No, absolutely. I absolutely love having guests like yourself come on to the show. And I guess it's my job to get the best out of you so that you can give the best to those that are going to be watching this episode. So Susan, you are the Director of Conscious Life Strategies That Work. We're going to find out a little bit about that over the course of the next 20 minutes or so on today's episode of One More Round. Now, I often say to guests that when they think of Apple, they think of Steve Jobs. When they think of Tesla, they think of Elon Musk. And so I always challenge people to put who they are at the forefront of their business or their brand, because I think it's that kind of clear identity of who somebody is that really builds that rapport for people to build that trust and actually, buy from you and do business, with you. So for those of people who don't know who you are, Susan, tell us a little bit about who you are.
So I am a South African living in Germany. I moved here at about 9 years ago when I met a man who was on his way back home, and all I thought was we were going to be in a space where it was dinner and a movie, nothing more. Famous last words, this man married me and brought me from my home to come and live in Germany. And I found myself in a space where I had to reinvent myself, recalibrate myself, and reposition myself in a whole new world, new language, new culture, new country. Who am I? I'm somebody, I think, who has been along the journey of life, who's had to reinvent herself, who's been through a number of life moments. We always say life is one of those things that happens to you when you're off making other plans. And if I look back over my journey, I've actually experienced exactly that, where you get sideswiped by life, where things happen that you didn't exactly plan for. Who am I? I'm a survivor. Who am I? I'm a realist. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a conscious life coach. And what that means is taking my experiences that I've had throughout my life and combining them with tools and combining them with resources, being able to help other people who find themselves in moments of crisis or moments where they have to recalibrate who they are to deal with what life is throwing at them at that moment in time.
Wow, I think you articulated that very well.
Thank you.
I liked it, Susan, because even when I tell people tell me what they do. Everybody always does that and never actually tells me like their personality, their heart, how they're put together. So I think, well done on that. Now, one of the questions I have for you, Susan, is if you were to have coffee with 3 people, living or dead, who would they be and why?
My first one would probably have to be Sai Baba. I've been a Sai Baba devotee for probably the last 30 years, and I would want to sit with him and just have a conversation on consciousness and the way the universe works and why it works this way. And that is something that is so integral to the very core of who I am. And so if there was anybody that I could choose, I think that would be first up that I would like to sit down with. I'd like to unpack Brené Brown's mind. I have devoured all of her books. She has such a very simple, elegant way of telling life like it is. And so I would really like to have a cup of coffee with Brené Brown and really just find out what makes her tick. I love the way that she just explains life in such very, very simple terms. And then a funny one that comes to mind, I'd probably like to sit down with Theresa May and find out what on earth is she planning with Brexit and what is she thinking as she goes forward. I'm a British passport holder and I would really like to know what's going on as we move forward. So those would be my 3 choices right now. They would change probably as you know, as we grow and we evolve, we get interested in different things. But I think number one would be Sai Baba.
Very good. I liked it. What makes you happy, Susan? You seem to have a very calm but very gentle but enthusiastic kind of manner to you. What really makes you happy? What's the sweet spot that puts you in that moment of happiness?
It's going to sound really interesting. We moved a little while ago out of the big city to a tiny little village in the German countryside. And everybody said, "Are you nuts? What are you doing? You're moving into this quiet little backwater." I want you to picture the scene. I'm surrounded by German forests, and everything that you've ever heard about a German forest is absolutely true. And I try to go walking in the forest 3 or 4 times a week. And for me, just being in that space where breathing in the rhythm of nature, being in the absolute silence that you find yourself in amongst the trees, that for me is life at its absolute best, where nobody's asking anything of you. Nobody's demanding anything of you. You are not asking anything of life. You're not demanding anything from it. It is a space where you can really, truly just be. And so happiness at the moment comes surrounded by German trees for me. It's just a very beautiful, very calming space to be. Very
good. I like that. Now, it sounds like you have been a lover of learning like I have and have consumed a lot of content. So kind of 2 questions around this. The first one would be, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given, Susan? And I appreciate it's like picking your favorite child. But if there is one, what is it?
Okay, so first to mind comes high intentions, low expectations.
Okay, and who's that by?
Say that again.
So that's the quote: high intentions, low expectations.
Yeah.
And what do you mean by that exactly? What do you think?
As in, you hope for the very, very best, and you plan for the very best, and you go into every encounter giving it the very best that you possibly can, and expecting that it will unfold to its very best potential. But you don't get attached to anything. That you are in a space where what happens, happens. So you're not hung up that it has to appear this way, or it has to look that way, or it has to taste like this. So you have high intentions of the very best unfolding, but low expectations of what that's actually going to look like. And that actually is a Vedic truth. It is something that all the gurus will tell you, to be in a space of non-attachment. And for a long time, I didn't understand really this thing of non-attachment, you know, because we go through life and of course we attach to everything. And it was only when I heard this said in this way, have high intentions, bring your absolute A game to everything that you do, but very low expectations of what's going to unfold out of it. And it takes the stress out of it. It takes the pressure out of it, and it allows the situation to be what it is.
I like that. And then just the second part of that, if there was one book that you could recommend or one app that's really helped you in your life or business, what would that be?
Wow. Okay. So I use so many apps and I'm reading books all the time, but it's not a book and it's not an app, but it is a game. And that would be the cash flow game. And it would be something that I would suggest that parents sit down with their kids, and that you learn and you play this game with your kids, so you can play it as a family. As I was growing up, and I think a lot of people of my age, as we were growing up, we were always taught, you know, you grow up, you go to university if you're a boy, you get a job, and you work at that job for the rest of your life. If you were a girl, you grow up, you make yourself as pretty as you can, you work until you get married, and then you bring up your kids. There was never any talk about preparing us for finances or for the real world. You know, there was never any talk about how you were going to maybe even step into your own business and do something beyond the scope of a job or a marriage. And I think it's so important that we teach our kids that they have got the potential and they've got the power and they've got the possibility to learn how to make money and how to leverage money and how the world of money and the real world out there works, so that they don't get that rude awakening when they're in a space where they're in a job that they hate or in a marriage that sucks and they have absolutely no understanding about money. So it's by Robert Kiyosaki. So a very, very good game that I would suggest that people go out there and you play it with your kids. You play it with each other, and it's very, very informative.
Lots of mantras, lots of things that we hear and focus on, but two things I think will really make a bigger impact in your life. The first one is be kind, and the second one is be all in. So my challenge and my encouragement is the world needs kindness. So at every point, choose to be kind. Give up a seat for somebody who's older than you. You know, just open a door for a lady, whatever it looks like, be kind. And the second thing is be all in. So everything you do it with the full energy, the full heart, and the full commitment. If you do these two things, the reputation that you have amongst your community will grow, and you'll really feel good about yourself. So be kind and be all in.
Now, the show is called One More Round, Susan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people, when they hear that, it conjures up different thoughts and ideas, but most of the time people kind of have a similar sort of theme. But when you hear the words "one more round," what does it stir up for you?
For me, it's this thing that says, you know what, you've been a bit battered and bruised. You've probably lost your teeth somewhere along the way. You don't know how you're going to go on, but you've got to dig deep, and you've got to dig into resilience and resources that you didn't think you had, and get back into the ring and see it through. So when I think of One More Round, the first time I heard it, I had this image of being in a boxing ring and being flattened by life or situations or circumstances and feeling like, oh, I don't know how to get through this. I don't know what to do. And then sitting in the corner, and the coach in the corner saying, right, okay, here's some water and here's your mouth guard, and he's going to puff up your muscles and push you back in and say, come on, you can do it. Just one more round, you can do it. That was the image that came to mind.
Beautiful, yeah. And we go through them all the time at different levels.
Mm.
Would there be a story that you'd be willing to share, Susan, if that's either personal or a business story which has done that to you?
There have been so many. I am a life crisis and conflict coach. And I got to do this and be this because I have been through so many crises and so many conflicts. So I've been trained by experience, and I've been trained on the road, as it were, along with learning and courses and study and so on. So I've been through, all the things that life can throw at you. And for instance, struggling with infertility, struggling for years and years and years to fall pregnant, and then falling pregnant and then having so many miscarriages, and being in that space of having to pull yourself together when all evidence says that you're not going to be able to do this. And carry on and carry on and carry on, to the point where I was able to fall pregnant with my daughter after years of infertility treatment, and have the baby that I so badly wanted. I now do an enormous amount of infertility counselling and coaching with clients. Why? Because I've been there. Recently, having to move from my home country to a new country, it doesn't sound so daunting, But when you take away your ability to communicate and you can't speak the language, and here you are and you're an English speaker in a country that speaks a very different language, that you can't even hear the song, you can't even hear the lyrics of the language, it's very, very alienating, and it's very disempowering. So I found that was a very it was one of the critical moments in my life that says, okay, so who are you going to be now that you can't communicate, now that you can't express, now that you can't talk to anybody, now that you can't even go to the hairdresser and say, could you cut my hair in such a way, or go to the shop and say, can I please buy that? So there have been so many experiences along the way. I've been in a space where I've experienced divorce. I know what that is like. I've been in a space where I have had to look after an elderly parent, so being a caregiver of an elderly parent and nursing an elderly parent for a number of years until he died. So these are all experiences, I think, that we're not prepared for, that we're not resilient, that we don't have, often we don't have the resources that when they come. And so when I do my work, it's being able to draw on these very personal experiences where I've had to dig and go in and, shoulders back and the backbone straight and lift up the chin and say, I can do one more round. I can get back in the ring. I can do one more round.
And what do you think is prevented from all those things from burying you? Like what's made you push through? What's got you through those dark times?
I think these experiences, they bring despair, they bring depression, they bring anxiety, they bring stress, they bring, oh my God, what the hell am I supposed to do with this now? For me, my mainstay has always been being able to go into meditation, being able to go into a space of silence. I follow what I call a Vedic path. And so this is about studying the Vedas and studying the ancient knowledge. And for me, my go-to whenever I'm in a space of stress is to go into a space of inner consciousness and space of prayer, space of meditation. That's that is what pulls me through. But I will be honest, I've been through the anxiety, I've been through the despair. I know depression intimately. I have walked that road. And I think it's so important that when people are going through massive, massive stress is to normalize it and say, it's okay to be in a space of grief. It's okay to be in a space of deep sadness, and because I think so often the world says, push it away, it's a negative feeling, or push it away, stop being sad. And I think that we often go through these experiences with unresolved pain that we've pushed down or we've suppressed because we don't know what to do with it, and we don't know how to actually deal with it. And I think it's so important to be able to turn around and say, you know what, I am angry, I am sad, I am tearful, I am anxious, I am bloody terrified, whatever it is, because these are human emotions. And I think normalizing that is such an important thing to do.
Very true. Very true. Now, tell me more about your work. So we talked about at the start that you were the founder and director of Conscious Life Strategies That Work. What is that exactly? How did that kind of form? You said at the start you're really fascinated by what drives people, what makes people do what it is that they do. Why this for you?
There's this truth that says that we are trained for what we're supposed to do in life by life itself. And I was born into quite a dysfunctional family, and with everything that goes, so from divorce and death and alcoholism and all of these not so nice experiences. And for the first part of my life, I was probably trying to just get through it and just get over it and just overcome it. And I fell into doing this quite by accident. I will tell you, I was in a space where I was running my own business. I was trying for a baby. I was shuddering with infertility. I was trying to deal with my childhood and my past and all of this. And I met a man during the course of this work, or during the course of all of this happening, who was a psychologist, and he was a hypnotherapist. And I had to interview him, actually, for an article that I was writing. And I was interviewing this man, and there was something that just went on inside of me, and I want to do that. He was talking about how he was working with patients and how he was helping them to get through the most unspeakable situations in their life, and how he was, with hypnosis or with psychotherapy or with various psychological tools, he was helping people to navigate through some really impossible situations, but he was helping them to transcend them and to heal through them. And there was this light bulb that went on inside of me and says, I want to do that. I want to be that person. I want to figure out how that works. I don't just want to be this person who's gone through all this crap and it must be for a reason. And I took myself back to university. I was a mature student, took myself back to university in my mid-30s, went off to study psychology. And I was studying all sorts of workshops and all sorts of trainings along the way, because this just absolutely fascinated me. It was almost from the minute I made that decision that said, that's what I want to do. It was like my life took on this completely other trajectory. And for the last 21 years, that's what I've been doing, is I've been working with people. And, it's interesting when you start off doing the work and you find out who actually comes to you. And I found that the people who came to me were the people who were struggling with getting over a crappy childhood, or people who were in a space where they were struggling to make head or tail of a divorce, or were struggling with jealousy or infidelity, or were in a space where now they had to deal with an aging parent who'd moved into their home who was creating havoc. And I found myself in a space where I was surrounded by people who were going through crisis. Because I think of my journey that I've been through, I understood their language. It's like you speak the same kind of language. And I have never regretted it for a moment. I've been doing this for the last 21 years. I'm constantly studying. I'm constantly learning to see what else I can bring into what it is that I do. For me, it is the most tremendous privilege. It's the most incredible honor to be with somebody and to help them craft a way through whatever hell they're in, whether it is depression, whether it is anxiety, whether it is being bullied in a family situation or at work, to be able to craft a strategy that works for them, a conscious life strategy, if you like, just for them and for their situation. It's the most beautiful thing to see somebody who's been in a space of pain who actually opens up and says, you know what, I can do this. I can actually do this. So I find myself incredibly privileged to do the work that I do.
Awesome, Susan. How do people find out more about you? How do they connect?
Well, most of the time, and I know it's not supposed to be a good business strategy, but most of the time it's by word of mouth. So that's how most of my clients come to me. I've done very little advertising over the years. If people want to get hold of me, LinkedIn, Facebook, email is always the best way. Just type in Susan Schöning and it will come up somewhere where it'll take you off to LinkedIn or to Facebook or even into my website. but how people find me, I always think that when you're in a space and you send out that call to the universe that says, I need some help in navigating through this, I think that you get guided to a place that resonates with you. And so I've been very lucky that people find their way. I have a very full practice. I have a very busy diary. And one of the things, actually having to go one more round, because that's the name of the segment, but was when I moved to Germany and I found myself in a space where I now couldn't do my practice clearly because I couldn't speak German. How was I going to do my business? And making the decision to put myself online. And being this absolute technophobe who had no clue of what she was doing and doing it by trial and error. And now I do all my work online. I do everything via Skype or via Zoom. And so I work with people from all over the world. So I haven't really learned much German, I must be honest, because everything I do is still in English, but it's now with people from all over the world as opposed to in an office.
Awesome. Susan, it's been great to have you on today's episode of One More Round.
It has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing your story, your heart, your wisdom, and your strategies. And we look forward to seeing you continue on your success.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark, for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed speaking with you.
Cheers, Susan.
Thanks. Bye-bye.